The country woke up to further violence and, plainly speaking, just absolute rioting in the name of opposition to the Agnipath, the Army's new recruiting scheme. I'm Shivani Gupta. Thanks a lot for staying with CNN News 18, and that continues to be our top focus. The protests are intensifying, but are these protests, or is there a deliberate design to unleash violence, clashes, arson, stone pelting, and even deaths across the country? Remember, at least one casualty has already taken place. Most violent protests have been reported from Bihar and Secunderabad. These continue after the centre extended the upper age limit for admission into the Agnipath scheme to 23 for this year. That was turning out to be one of the biggest grievances of aspirants, that they haven't been able to get recruited for the last 2 years, and therefore their future is in limbo. Now, even the government, despite the fact that the government has solved that crisis for this year by extending the age limit, what justifies protests? And certainly there can be no justification for the manner of these protests. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has been one of the top ministers to appeal protesters to not agitate in this fashion and join the army. Instead, take the opportunities, the benefit of those opportunities. But before we get you more on that, let's take a quick check of some of the most dramatic visuals, some of the most concerning visuals that have come to light as far as this rioting is concerned. They've started with dharnas and sloganeering, but of course took an ugly turn as protesters torched this train in Secunderabad. This is one of the worst affected spots. What we're getting to know is that there were passengers inside. As far as this rioting is concerned, this is not really a protest. This is not how you protest at all. But such protests have been legitimized over the last 3-4 years, and therefore this situation is transpiring. Passengers were on board. They had to run for their life. This is the aftermath that shows of belongings that have been left behind. Absolutely spine-chilling. Murderous intent as far as this rioting is concerned. Hundreds of protesters marched towards Bihar Deputy Chief Minister Renu Devi's house as well and pelted stones in order to, quote, protest against the central government scheme. Renu Devi is a member of the ruling BJP, of course, at the centre in Bihar. There's a coalition government. But is this a way that you're going to register your protest? Look at these people. A lot of them have their faces covered. A lot of them are carrying lathis, etc. In many places, they're destroying public property just randomly. Of course, they're using the strength of the crowd to terrorize the rest of the population and, quote-unquote, get themselves heard. Why are they in many places carrying lathis? What is the intent? Why are some of them covering their faces? What is the intent? Protesters also wreaked havoc in various parts of the country. These are visuals from Sasaram. You can see that a toll plaza has been completely vandalized and damaged. Caught between the protesters in Mathura was a couple with a toddler with them. They were taking shield even as the cops were trying to protect them. This is a lady who's running to cover. There has even been children who've been caught in this melee. There's a toddler in the arms of his father, it looks like. We'll get you more such pictures. But there is no comparison to the mother's courage when it comes to the safety of her child. These are visuals from Secunderabad. Even as chaos is unleashing, remember, this woman is holding this young child in her arms and trying to protect. This is the kind of terror that is being unleashed on the rest of the population. On the basis of what? What justifies this? Remember, in Mathura, things got a little more ugly. Cops had to fire at the protesters as they continued to target locals and police forces with boulders. Of course, the police has to then take action. In fact, there have been many calls that the police must be instructed and authorized to take stricter action. How long are we going to tolerate these protests that put other people's law-abiding citizens' life in danger? Are tear gas shells enough? In Aligarh, a mob vandalized a Haryana Roadways bus. Is this a way to show your anger? In many places, passengers, ordinary citizens have been threatened, their life endangered. What is their fault? Agitators clearly going berserk, even trying to overturn this bus. Swastika Das, my colleague, has been reporting live from one of the worst hit spots, the railway station in Secunderabad. I'm coming across to you, Swastika. Give us a sense of the situation right now.
Well, after the rampage that we saw take place in the morning, now more police reinforcements have been brought in. In fact, the CRPF personnel have also arrived at the scene. Now, Vijay Venkatesh is getting you the visuals. These are the protesters who have now been gherowed and forced to sit here on the tracks. In fact, right now the police personnel have been roped in, and what they've done is they formed a human chain of sorts to ensure that the protesters don't go over to the other side and they don't spill over towards the railway station as well. So these are the protesters who had taken part in that rampage that took place earlier today. But of course, the visuals that we saw in the morning, the violence that took place, the trains were torched, vehicles inside the railway station were burnt, and also all the shops were completely vandalized. The violence that took place also claimed the life of one protester. That is what we can confirm. And we are also learning that at least 13 protesters are undergoing treatment at Gandhi Hospital. We are learning that that casualty could go up because all of them have allegedly sustained bullet injuries, and all of this was in retaliation to the violence that was taking place earlier today. But for now, this is the calm. I would say the situation is much better than it was earlier, because they are completely, protesters right now are outnumbered at the moment, because most of them have already left the spot. Now Telangana police is here, the RPF is here, as well as the disaster relief team is here, and also the CRPF force, the rapid action force is also here. But what really is surprising is, at the time when the violence took place, and it was straight a 3-hour violence from 8:30 till 12 o'clock, I can say that was the worst period. We were here reporting from ground zero, and we saw the kind of way the situation spiraled out of control. And at that point in time, the police officials were clearly outnumbered. But for now, they're bringing in more reinforcements, and even as we speak, the police officer there trying to strike a dialogue with these protesters, asking them to move away from the spot, because right now the entire station has come to a screeching halt. Not just that, metro services, local train services are severely affected. More than 70 trains are affected. 65 or 61 MMTS trains have been cancelled. So the kind of inconvenience that has been caused, the police officials are now requesting the protesters here, saying that this is not the way to protest against anything in this country. What remains to be seen is the violence that took place earlier today, who instigated it, because it was clearly, indications say that they're clearly pre-planned protests, because there were petrol bombs which were recovered from the trains, big grenade-sized boulders were recovered from the trains. All of these protesters did come armed with iron rods, and the subsequent violence and the anarchy that took place here was clearly something that is not a bolt from the blue. In fact, that is something even the police officials at this point in time are investigating.
Absolutely, that needs to be investigated. But this is really trying to spread terror as far as the rest of the country is concerned. Just like you don't negotiate with terrorists, this is not the way that any protesters' demand can be met. And that is the precedent that cannot go down as far as such protests are concerned. That's already a dangerous trend as far as India is concerned.